thank you for being here tonight for our twofer. First, we're honored, and I'm going to introduce just two of the speakers here. But first, we have Stan Kaczmarczyk, and Stan is GSA's acting director of the Office of Strategic Programs. And what that means is he has a very large portfolio, which includes the ITS Center for all of the GWAC programs, the Center for Strategic Solutions, and for security services. And Stan leads the workforce that manages Alliant, STARS, VETS, all of the cloud contracts, SmartBuy, US Access, and other strategic solutions. And Stan is a veteran with over 20 years with GSA. I've known him for many years. He's done a great job. When he moved from the Office of Government-Wide Policy, where he had broad policy authority over many different parts of government, including IT, fleet management, personal and real property, and did a fantastic job there. Then made the right career move, joining FAST, one of my old organizations, as the Director of Cloud Services Program Management Office. And so Stan is going to start in a few minutes. Stan also holds an MBA, if I pronounce it right, from Baruch College. Next is part of our twofer talking about cybersecurity. Our second one, I want to start with our first speaker, which is Brad Nix. Brad is right here in our second row. And for those who don't know Brad, he's the Chief Information Security Officer for Food and Nutrition Service at Agriculture. He's also a member of the ACT Executive Board and a great member. He's Brad, amongst his many roles in government and in industry, he also holds a master's in MIS from the University of Virginia and a bachelor's in business administration from James Madison University. So without further ado, let me turn things over to Stan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. You just passed the clicker. The power is mine. Thanks for inviting me to speak here today. I think this meeting was postponed from December or something. There were some snow days, and so so they postponed it all the way out to February 25th. And I woke up this morning and look out the window and like, damn, it's snowing again. So it was meant to be, Shetty, as the gentleman said in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I stopped wearing my watch years ago when I realized I could take out my phone and look at the time, but I've left my phone in the car, so if I start to run long, somebody's got to yell at me and tell me to just start shutting up, but that might not be a problem. I gave the same exact presentation a week ago at, I think they're called IDGA. So you guys have a good acronym, ACT, IAC, it's easy to remember. Something like IDGA. Yeah, so it was the 5th annual Cloud Computing Conference for DoD and government. And I'm pretty sure I spoke at the 3rd and the 4th also. But there weren't very many questions during the presentation, and I just ran right through it. So, I showed up, and the first speaker was on. They were already behind schedule. So by the time I got done, they were back on schedule. So feel free to interrupt me, raise your hand, ask questions, or if you prefer, hold the questions to the end. Just have a lot of questions, otherwise we may not finish 45 minutes. My presentation basically revolves around the challenges that we have found in ITS, Integrated Technology Services, FAS, Federal Acquisition Service, GSA, General Services Administration, not Government Services Administration, as even the Washington Post keeps calling us. Challenges in the acquisition of cloud services, and we have a number of lessons learned to share with you today. So let's get into it. Does the clicker work? It does. That's me. Okay. So I'm going to give you, first of all, an overview of the different programs in my office. Jim mentioned pretty much all of them, or most of them. I have to come here and plug all the stuff I do, not just what you're interested in hearing about. And that's the kind of the price you have to pay for inviting me. Again, like I said, some of our lessons learned in our cloud acquisition vehicles, and it has been certainly a learning process and a learning curve, not just for GSA and our government agency customers, but our vendor partners also. I'll talk a little bit about where we stand with our cloud broker initiative that always engenders a lot of interest, and it has been sort of a journey for us because we were kind of breaking new ground, and when you do that, things never develop the way you originally envisioned them. There's always some turn in the road, and we've had a couple of them so far, and some thoughts about how we think we can improve acquisition for cloud services based on the lessons learned that we have to date. So the office that I'm running, at least this week, is the Office of Strategic Programs, and there are two centers in that office, as Jim mentioned. There's a Center for Government-Wide Acquisition Contracts, or GWACs, and the Center for Strategic Solutions and Security Services. You're all familiar with GWACs, Alliance Small Business, STARS, VETS, and those contracts. Talk a little bit about them later also. The Center for Strategic Solutions and Security Services is basically a collection of programs that migrated their way to ITS. Sometimes referred to as good for government programs. Some of these programs are, intend to break even or recover their costs. Some of them will never recover their costs, and we're finding other ways to fund them. The GWACs, of course, charge a fee and are intended to at least recover their costs, if not bring in additional revenue. If I just get the GWACs to make enough money to offset the costs of the other programs in the other center, that would be great. But as it turns out right now, I have a pretty grisly P&L projection for FY14, so we're working on that. But in addition to the GWACs, as Jim mentioned, we have the Smart Buy program, which has been working with the Federal Strategic Sourcing Initiative on software buys, the first one being Microsoft. We put out an RFQ for that back in November, closed at the end of December, and we're currently in evaluation on that. And we have the U.S. Access program, which is the second largest PIV identity card program of the government behind DoD, which is their Common Access Card program. It's the largest shared service across the government. We have almost 100 customers. The concept of U.S. Access is we have about 5 or 6 big agencies, and then we leverage the economies of scale to provide PIV services to all the medium and small size agencies. So they wouldn't be able to have PIV card service if it wasn't for that. Some of the boards and commissions that we service have as few as 2 people on them, so they're not going to go out and stand up their own smart identity card program. We also have the federal public key infrastructure that we manage, which is sort of the trust infrastructure underlying U.S. Access and CAC cards and everything else in the government. And we do a lot of work in security. And I mentioned the Cloud Broker Initiative, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Here's just a few of the lessons learned so far as procuring cloud services for the government. We started off setting up 2 blanket purchase agreements, and we were sort of the operational. There was a cloud PMO that was stood up, and we were the operational part of it, and the GSA Office of Citizen Services and Innovative Technologies was the policy side of it, and we also worked under OMB, the Office of E-Government, first Vivek Kundra and now Steve Van Rokel. And so it was seen that the low-hanging fruit as far as moving agencies to the cloud was infrastructure as a service, website hosting, storage, virtual machines, and then email as a service. These were seen as commodity-type offerings, and that when agencies had the mandate, which they did, to move 3 systems to the cloud by whatever the date was, June this year or June last year, I can't keep track, it was seen that these would be the ones that they would go to first. So we've had mixed success with these BPAs. Anytime you set up a contract vehicle based on policy versus based on market research and talking to your customers and finding out what they're looking for and talking to vendors and finding out what they can supply, you're probably not going to have a big winner financially, and that's kind of what we've seen so far with these two BPAs. But one of the things, when we set up the infrastructure, was pretty early in cloud first, and security was seen as maybe the big impediment to agencies moving to the cloud. So, and this was pre-FedRAMP days. FedRAMP was just a gleam in somebody's eye in OMB. And so what we did is we put a requirement in the infrastructure as a service BPA that a vendor had to have an authority to operate granted by GSA before they could even bid on a task order on the contract. Now we fixed that with email as a service BPA to say that as long as you have FedRAMP certification, it's okay, but you can bid before that happens. So what ended up happening with infrastructure as a service is that it took almost a year to stand everything up, make the awards, and then it took a year or more to start awarding ATOs, and it was very slow on the uptake. And I'll show you a slide later about the awards that have been made to date. We find we need some kind of, because it takes so long to put these contract vehicles in place, and because technology moves faster than the speed of federal contracting, we find that we need to figure out some kind of a mechanism to onboard and offboard cloud service providers a lot more quickly than we can currently do. And we need to do a better job on service level agreements. Here's some of the orders, or here are the orders we've had to date. So what we find is, we work with customers a lot, and on their email procurements, and they get down the road, and then sometimes they don't use the BPA. They order directly against 70, or they use their own agency contract. And sort of we kind of work with staff from the CIO office, and then what happens is sometimes it goes to the acquisition office, and the contracting officer has a completely different idea about what path to take, despite all the so-called agreements we've had with the CIO folks. So all these are customers that we worked with that if they did not order off the BPA, they either order directly from Schedule 70 or set up their own BPA against Schedule 70, as Army has done. Just a couple of examples here of things that we've encountered is we worked with a headquarters agency that wanted to set up they wanted to issue a task order against our BPA for email as a service. And what they wanted was, they would first migrate the headquarters mailboxes, and then as the various bureaus and departments were ready, as their, legacy email contracts expired, as they were ready to move on, then they would just issue task orders and move on to the same solution. Well, the way we have the BPA set up, you can't do that. Every time you issue a new task order, it's a new fair market opportunity, and you could potentially get a different vendor or a completely different solution. So that didn't work for them. So they ended up standing up their own BPA against Schedule 70, modeled on ours, so that they could, they could do it in a rational way and not have multiple integrators. Another example that's come up just recently is we worked with an agency, and our BPA for emails as a service has U.S.-only pricing as far as hosting is concerned, and pricing around the world, because most federal agencies would like to have their data hosted in the United States and not in China, India, wherever, in North Korea. But if you want to, you'll pay less, and you'd say we were able to do that. So we had. So we worked with an agency. They issued a task order for a 1-year base, 4 option years, U.S. pricing, and a major cloud service provider who I will not mention, but has been a major pain in the neck to me and us for a couple of years now, said, no, we're only going to give you 2 years pricing. We're not going to commit to 5 years. So I think they're going to redo their task order, hopefully, so I don't lose the business after all the effort we put into it. They're going to redo it as a 1-year base and 1-year option, but they're not happy about it. I'm certainly not happy about it, but these are the types of obstacles that we see, and it's not always on us, right? So it's a business issue. Basically, what we've learned about BPAs, and what I've learned about BPAs, is these kind of government-wide BPAs that we put in place for the cloud orders they don't really add much value getting in between the Schedule 70 contracts and the customer's requirements. BPAs work when they're single vendor BPAs. Like we have a couple of BPAs for the U.S. Access Program. We have a BPA for card management services and for PKI certificates, and that really works. Whenever we need 100,000 cards, we place it's a single vendor award. We need 100,000 cards. We place the order and we get it, and we get a good price. These kind of multi-agency things don't seem to be working, so that's kind of a major lesson learned, and we're currently looking at other ways to do this. One of the things that we're looking at is we've got a working group in GSA looking at basically creating a special item number for cloud services right on Schedule 70. So drive all the requirements directly to the base 70 schedules and not have this BPA in the middle defining the requirements, so that agencies can do a BPA directly against 70, because one of the other issues is that, depending on who you talk to, but a lot of contracting offices will say the FAR does not allow a BPA against a BPA. Some people go ahead and do that. I don't know if it's a matter of interpretation or if, DOD just does whatever they want, but they'll do a BPA against a BPA. But many people, including GSA. So here are the orders we've had to date against the infrastructure as a service, BPA, and they're really all clustered into FY12. Like I said, there was a slow uptake, getting the BPAs in place, getting the security done, and then we had a rush of orders in FY12 basically, and then FY13 there's been basically nothing. So we're trying to figure out what's the reason for the slowdown here. I think part of the reason is not really a lot of competition. For example, on the third lot, which is website hosting, there's only one vendor that holds a valid ATO right now. So if you like that vendor and you want that vendor to host your websites, this is the best vehicle for you. You just place an order and you're in. Are you going to get a competitive quote? I don't think so, because there's nobody else competing for it. So, and even though you don't need to have 3 offers against this BPA. A lot of contracting officers still think that you need 3. So of the original 12 vendors that hold BPAs on this infrastructure as a service, only 6 of them have ever attained an ATO to date, and it's been about 3+ years so far. So it's been a long stretch for them. Clicker just failed me. There we go. Some lessons learned from our GWACS program is the need to, again, I've mentioned this before, more easily onboard new vendors and create a process for successful small businesses to participate. So what happened is we have Alliant Small Business. They're both approaching their 5-year option, my 5-year base and 5-year option. And during the course of the first 5 years, many of the small businesses on Alliant Small Business, thrived and grew to be bigger than small business, in no small part due to their participation in our GWAC. So what happens is when we exercise the option for the next 5 years, they can no longer compete on Alliant Small Business. So we don't think that's a good thing. There are 3 FAR exceptions that under which they can compete for new business even after the 5 years are over. One of them, the most important, being a logical follow-on. But we would like to figure out, we're currently in the process of developing the requirements and doing the market research for what we call, because we're very creative, Alliant 2, the follow-on to Alliant, and I guess it would be Alliant Small Business 2. And they were calling it Alliant Next Gen, but a lot of people are using Next Gen, so I think we're going to do Alliant 2. And we'd like to find a way so that, structure it in such a way that, when this situation comes up again, maybe the Alliant Small Business graduates can compete, can migrate to the the Enterprise Alliant contract rather than just be left out in the cold. So that's sort of a lesson learned right there. We don't want to punish success, right? I mean, it goes against the whole grain of what we're trying to do with the small business contract. Standardization of labor categories, FPDS and all that. I mean, there's just so much stuff going on trying to clean up our systems, and our data is so bad. I can't figure out what my revenue is and what my business volume is, and it's you get a 30-day window to report your awards on Alliant, and people are reporting 60, 90, 120 days afterwards. So it's just chaos. We're doing a lot of work around the system. Some of it is our fault. Some of it is on industry to do a better job working with us to report stuff. Flexible fee structure. This is the OASIS thing. OASIS, which, and I guess they haven't awarded the enterprise ones. They awarded the small business ones this week. But OASIS has already cut a deal with Air Force that Air Force guaranteed them a certain. If anybody doesn't know, OASIS is the next big GSA contract, but it revolves around professional services. And it's not part of ITS, it's part of another part of Federal Acquisition Service. And they've already cut a deal, in exchange for a certain guarantee. I think it's $500 million in the first year. They get a reduced fee, although they haven't even awarded a VP and charged a fee to anybody yet. So we're kind of anticipating that the Air Force and other customers, when they get wind of this, will come to us and Alliant and the GWACs and ask for similar deals. So we're running the numbers and trying to see how that'll be. That costs panics the staff. Oh my God, variable fees. But I think the guaranteed volume part is good because, as I said, we're trying to use these less than adequate financial systems and really kind of rudimentary algorithms to project our business volume and project our revenue. So I think guaranteed volume is a good thing and helps in that case. Agencies more flexibility. This is what Alliant is all about. I mean, you got. I'll talk a little bit later about, unless I missed my notes, it's the next slide, about cloud and commodity versus as a service. But, when you have these big complex IT projects, migrations, or standing up new systems, you don't really know what you're getting into at the beginning. So you need a more flexible contract vehicle like Alliant or like a GWAC to move into it rather than things that are supposedly commodity buys. So I think in many ways, if you have a more complex cloud migration, GWACs are probably better for you. And more overlap between contracts. I'll have a slide that shows this later about how we're trying to get Alliant 2 in place before Alliant 1 expires, so that there's continuity of vendor offerings to the customer. So you could, an Alliant, you could place an order on the last day of the Alliant contract, and you could still get a 5-year period of performance. But agencies don't tend to do that. You'll see the slide later how the volume seems to ramp down in the last couple of years. So we figure if we can put Alliant 2 in place in times for an overlap, then they'll just go right to Alliant 2 to get the vendors they want, and they'll feel more confident about that. We've got a Interact site up, an internet site up. We're encouraging industry to participate in developing the requirements for the contract. Max is an OMB site where you have to post business cases for any new contract that you want to go forward with. We just yesterday posted our business case there for Max, although some anxious employee of ours posted it like a week ago, and I was not too happy about that. He was trying to pre-position it, and he posted the business case, and it's like, I said, well, and they were trying to like ramrod it through me all. I said, well, it's only routine. Of course they're going to approve Alliant 2. I was like, yeah, that's nice. I said, pull it back. Yeah, but it's already pull it back. So we pulled it back. I hadn't even read it yet, so we pulled it back, and yes, it has to go to my boss, and it has to go to her boss, and everybody has to be okay with it. So it took another week, but it got posted yesterday, and thank goodness they posted the corrected version that didn't refer to NIH as the National Interior of Health. So, but it's just routine, so just. So okay. Always pays to proofread. Continuing with the lessons learned. You see, as a service, cloud orders under the GWACs represent 20 to 30% of our business. So, people say, well, cloud is becoming a commodity, infrastructure as a service, email as a service, whatever is a service. But I think these as a service offerings are really more complex than people think. Certainly, migrating legacy systems to the cloud is more complex than that. So I think that the GWACs are really probably good for a lot of the cloud business that federal agencies anticipate. The rest of us have a slide actually later that explains this more in detail, but we worked with the Alliance. So, I hate these war stories, right? So we go to OMB a couple days before Thanksgiving a couple years ago, and the policy wonks are there, and somebody here from OMB, right? They don't participate in IACT, do they? So they're like, okay, emails, infrastructure as a service, great. Email as a service, which was still under evaluation, not even awarded at that time. Great. What's the next BPA? And I'm like, I don't think we want to keep doing these BPAs. So there was an interest in doing something around data center consolidation. So we decided to do sort of procurement templates to help agencies consolidate data centers and move to the cloud. And so we worked with the Alliant Shared Interest Group. And basically, they developed a series of scopes of operation and they tied them to the 5 phases of data center consolidation that was published by OMB and OXIT. Pronounce the acronym the other way. So basically, we went to you folks and said, when an agency issues a scope of operation, what is it you need to see to make a sensible bid? What metrics do you need? What data do you need? Because as you know, if the requirements are not clear, we're going to end up as a government paying more than we need to because they're going to factor in all the what ifs and this and that. So we developed a series of procurement templates and put them on the web and all that good stuff. And that's one of the approaches that we want to take rather than keep standing up what I call these boutique cloud BPAs. We have expertise in cloud computing. We're going to help agencies satisfy their requirements and try to point them in the right direction as far as what contract vehicle to use, and then provide them with sample SLAs, sample scopes of operation, whatever they need to make their acquisition a little bit easier. Currently, the leadership in FAS and GSA has expanded that concept somewhat to, they call it, we need to be contract agnostic. So in their view, when we work with customers to satisfy the requirements, if NASA SOUP or the NIH CIO SSP3 is a better alternative for them, we're supposed to point them that way. But and this is supposed to motivate us to sort of bring our offerings up to speed so that we won't lose too much business and we'll still be able to stay in business. So it's an interesting concept, but everybody's on board, and we're going to move forward with it. Just an example of some orders that have been placed for cloud. The first one is kind of well-used example, GSA itself moving its email system to the cloud using Google Mail with Unisys as a prime. That was placed against the lion. Thank you very much, Casey Coleman, former CIO for GSA. And it's saved us a bunch of money. This Treasury Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, this really come across my radar recently. I was up at Smartronics in Ruston last week talking about this, but this is actually a BPA that they've set up. And again, this is how BPA, the best way it works, single vendor, and Treasury, all the different Treasury components can order off of it, but it's not a government-wide thing. There's a kind of a shared services thing, offices in Treasury, where you can sneak in the back door and order stuff, but it's not set up to primarily be that way. And you can basically get any kind of cloud service that you need off of this. And keep my eye on it, because it seems to be a successful model. You'll hear that when I talk about the cloud broker, about a single broker for an agency, a single vendor BPA for an agency. You don't want to mix and match integrators, and it's just I think these are, again, that's why I'm not really too keen on these government-wide things that we've been doing. And the IRS storage service, so they can keep track of all of your tax returns, and maybe use big data to find out which years you missed and come after you. That was another Unisys. The Unisys award. Okay, so cloud broker. So in our never-ending attempts to figure out, why are agencies slow to move to the cloud? What else can we do to help them get there? What kind of help do they need? We thought about this kind of cloud broker approach, and I totally oversimplify things, but if you think about legacy federal government IT, normally when servers are in the basement, you stand up a new system and you're hosting it, and you hire an integrator, vendor to do all that for you. Now you're supposed to move to the cloud, right? You think, oh my God, it's no longer here, it's somewhere else, and I'm supposed to manage it. I'm not used to doing that. So a cloud broker is really like an integrator for cloud, for a cloud environment compared to a typical IT integrator. There are other roles for cloud broker, but this was the kind of help that we thought agencies really needed. So we started looking into that. And here's a summary of it. Concept development. Oh, that was me. That's easy to summarize. So we did an RFI, and basically we pulled together a group of federal customers. We called it a brainstorming group, not a working group, because only OMB can convene a working group. So we called it a brainstorming group, and basically we talked about the challenges with cloud computing and IT in general, and we started off with a broker concept, but then we put it on the side and said, let's talk about what the challenges are and what we need. So we got all that down on paper, and then we put out the RFI and said, here are the things that are holding us up. Here are some challenges we need to overcome. We think maybe a cloud broker might help us address these needs. What do you think? And we got back a tremendous response. We got 80-something responses and over 1,500 pages of material, which Angela Smith is going through right now, I think, but, to catch up. We got a wide response from big companies, small companies, integrators, consultants, software developers, right across the board. Most of them said, yeah, we think a cloud broker could help the government. A couple of them were really negative. The same CSP I talked about before sent in a half a page and said, you're crazy to do this, you're just going to pay more money to a middleman. Stop doing it. And then they went to Congress and lobbied them. We got all these questions from congressmen and senators. Whenever you get congressional letters from Congress and senators, multiple sources, and the questions are all the same and phrased the same, somebody's lobbying them, right? So, but at least you don't have to prepare the answers over and over again, right? So always looking for a shortcut. So one thing we noticed in the responses is that a lot of people, a common theme was they said, well, you need some kind of a platform to manage this, a platform to hopefully acquire. We found that tough to figure out, but also to provision and manage your cloud services portfolio. And a few people said, we can build this for you. But then many people said they already had a platform like that. So we said, well, we don't want to build what's already out there. So next phase of the project was to kind of look at some of these platforms to see if the federal government could use them, or if there was some way that GSA could stand one up and license it out to the rest of the agencies to use. And the concept being that we'd stand up a cloud management platform, We do business with, let's say, DOJ. They would get their version of it at the enterprise level, and then, FBI would get a version of it under them, and we just, customize it as it goes through the bureaus. So we've been looking at a number of platforms to date. We issued a contract. We go. We looked at three. We planned to look at 5. We looked at 3 and decided we kind of saw enough. We've kind of come to the conclusion that the software is not robust enough to handle the federal government, or the federal government is too complex for any software to handle, if you want to look at it that way. But we did not find them to be easily customizable, if that's a word. For example, we're working with 2 customers in our proof of concept, DHS and HHS. And they have actual requirements that they want to move to the cloud in 14 and 15. And even if just DHS set up a platform, it would just take too much customization to have all the different bureaus and departments use it. So the idea of GSA standing up a government-wide one is just really didn't fly. So right now we're writing up our results of this. Not giving up on it, because again, we detoured down the, look at what's commercially available, but maybe the advice to build something that the federal government could use, maybe that was the right advice. So we're not giving up on it, but basically right now we're going to work with DHS and HHS and make sure that their requirements are satisfied in any way, either using a broker or not using a broker, using GSA, not using GSA, because we put in a lot of time and work with them and they with us on this. And so I believe in taking a customer-centric approach, and so we'll make sure that customers get what they need, and after that we'll figure out what GSA is going to be when it grows up as a cloud broker or as a manager of a cloud broker program. But we have several ideas about how to move forward. At the very minimum, I think we've shown a lot of leadership and innovation in the cloud broker space, and we've become a source of subject matter expertise to help agencies move to the cloud using a cloud broker. So I probably talked about all this already, right? Insufficient platform software maturity, and that's basically what I just said. Okay, this is interesting. So we have several agencies that have been in and around cloud broker. DISA, anybody here from DISA? Anybody? Okay. So DISA was anointed as the cloud broker for DoD just about the same time as we started our process and our RFI and everything. And they did participate in the brainstorming group, at least at the end of it. In fact, they were supposed to be on the panel presenting to our industry day that we had while the RFI period was open, and then they pulled out, but attended. But so what happened was, we were happy to work with any customer, and we had this draft RFI that we were going to put on the street, and we gave them a copy of it, and then we issued an RFI, and then they issued their RFI, and it was like word for word our RFI. So I was saying, okay, glad to be helpful there. So we've kind of engaged, intermittently with this. I think we need to do a better job of it. I'm reaching out to them myself again, and because we've always said, if you guys figure it out, we'll migrate the civilian side to you. If we figure it out, hopefully you'll migrate to us. It's a team effort. But they tend to kind of disappear on us. Right now, I think their cloud broker, the last time they engaged with us, they said we were about 18 months ahead of them as far as moving into this space. I think now, right now, their cloud broker initiative revolves around just basically, analyzing the needs of the different DoD services and just finding a pre-existing contract in DoD to use. So they're not in the space with the platforms or anything like that. Energy, on the other hand, the National Nuclear Security Administration, they did set up their own internal cloud management platform and provisioning and management platform for energy. They did offer us the use of their software, but I think it was the same issue about, it would take a lot of customization for other agencies to use it. State of Texas is kind of the prime mover of Cloud Broker. They had, and if you haven't read their case study, we probably have it on our website somewhere, but they had this huge backlog of IT projects and couldn't get through it, and they hired a broker and they started bidding out the work to different CSPs, and they cleaned up everything in no time. So, and they used Graviton, one of the platforms that we looked at. NASA, I think the Jet Propulsion Laboratory has done it the right way. They have hired a broker, I forget which one it is, but single vendor, and the broker analyzes the requirement, goes out and takes a look at the CSPs, determines which one looks like the best fit, and goes back to NASA, presents the case to them. This is why we think you should use Google or Amazon or whoever, Microsoft. And if NASA agrees, then they go out and the broker develops, the business relationship with the CSP. And that was one of the things that attracted us about the cloud broker model, because, as I mentioned, the federal contracting process is so long and onerous and inflexible. And we thought if we could just contract with brokers, and they could switch out the CSPs, they could bid the work out and get good prices, and we cut through all that contracting. We haven't figured out a very elegant way to do that yet, but NASA's doing it with the broker, and and again, if the performance is not there, SLAs are not being met, then the broker can go out and get a different CSP, and NASA's not locked into that CSP for a cloud service provider for a length of time. So again, I think a single broker, a single integrator, a single vendor BPA. I think this is kind of a theme that, at least to me, is coming up over and over again. As opposed, I don't really see us doing a BPA for cloud brokers, and Congress will be happy about that. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but here's the chart about Alliant 2 and this is a very busy chart, but this is sort of the performance of BPAs over time, and you can see they take a little while to ramp up, and then they do great, and then in the last couple of years they start to tail off, which is why we want to have an overlap between the replacements for Alliant and Alliant Small Business going forward. Yes, sir.
How much overlap are you talking about? Just curious if you're a Alliant holder, and then you've got 6 months ago an Alliant 2 comes up.
It's right on the screen. Current one expires 2018. We want to get the new one in place 2016. Of course, being government, we're already behind.
Sorry, how much overlap will there be?
A couple of years.
A couple of years.
Yeah. And of course, this was the schedule before the support contract to do this got protested, and we're still trying to. So we're at least we felt at least 6 months behind as a combination of the government shutdown and our support contract being protested and the stop work order being issued. So we're hoping to. Contracting people tell me we're going to make another award on Friday, so we'll see what happens. And if that gets protested too, then we're I don't know, but this is the plan, Jim. Okay, so at last week's presentation, the dry run, this actually got a lot of interest, but we have a GWAC dashboard, and you can look at our business volume from day to day. We do, like I said, we do have some problems with the data quality, but what we found so far. Actually, this is not the interesting part. It's the next slide. What we found so far this year, and I'd be interested in any feedback I could get from industry. We're certainly trying to get feedback from our Alliant contract holders. We found that volume on Alliant and Alliant Small Business has been really slow. Not so much small business, but the enterprise Alliant, really slow so far this year. We're about, I told Mary Davy we're about 20% under projections on the top of my head, and then I saw the data, it was more like 50% under projections. So we know we had the government shut down for a few weeks in October, and we also know there's this 30-day reporting lag. So you got October, November, December, and we probably don't have full reporting for January yet because they have 30 days after January 31st. But we're about 50% behind. I'm told by sources in Gartner and Deltek and some of the vendors we talked to that they're also seeing pretty much a slowdown so far in IT orders from the federal government. So we don't know really what's behind that. We're trying to figure it out. Traditionally, the GWACs do most of their volume, or the big uptick is in the third and fourth quarter. So we're hoping for that. Last year we had a very atypical year. We started off really strong and then flattened out in the third and fourth quarter. So we're trying to figure out how that happened too. But so far this year, it's been pretty slow. This is the slide I got a lot of interest last week. We have a prices paid portal. So you'll hear a lot of stuff from GSA about prices paid, not just in GWACs, but everywhere, FSSI, and almost everything we do. But the idea is to make it more transparent to federal customers, particularly contracting officers, what other agencies are paying. This is key to the labor categories, so that they can make, as far as government cost estimates, more quality ones, and as far as evaluation of actual offers, more intelligent decisions. So this will tell you what the lowest, the highest, and the average price has been awarded on Alliant per labor category. I had a question last week about, do we have this by geographic region, and we do. And I didn't know the answer, but I found out the answer. We don't, but that is one of the enhancements that we plan for FY14. In our RFQ that we issued for the Microsoft licenses and cloud services, we put a provision in there for the vendors to report prices paid. Now, every time you do that, of course, ask industry to do more, you're going to pay for it. But the powers that be, FSSI, even though their goal is to save the government money, they decide it's okay to save government a little less money and then pay to get the prices paid data, which maybe in the big picture will save you more money. I don't know. And this is in more detail the work we did that I described before around the Federal Data Center Consolidation Initiative and the sample scopes of operation that we developed, basically the Alliant SIG developed, and that we provided to our customers who may be in different phases of data center consolidation. ITS took a couple of years to develop what we call the ITS Navigator tool. And we have some staff people that work on it also. And the idea here is that you can feed your requirements into it, and we'll point you to the right GSA contract vehicle to satisfy your requirements. Because now we have, as I said before, a broader philosophy about contract agnostic. So I would kind of like to stand up a portal just for cloud broker services, and see if we could do something similar to IT Solutions Navigator. There's another part of FAS working on an e-commerce tool, and then there's a gleam in somebody's eye to do something we call the Common Acquisition Platform, which basically would be an acquisition platform to buy for any federal agency to buy anything, and would be contract agnostic, and we get NASA and NIH to play, and that's kind of a huge undertaking, but it's definitely on the table as far as something that might be under development in GSA. But that's sort of the mother of all acquisition platforms, and certainly if it moves forward, it'll be a good business opportunity for somebody. There's my contact information, and if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
I just have one question. You talked about how under the GWAS the task force are moving towards addressing more complex. Thank you, Nick. You talked about in the GWACs the requirements are moving towards more complex things. Yet on the other hand, you're trying to standardize labor categories and use a prices paid portal. So how you're doing more and more complex work, does a prices paid per labor category or standardizing those labor categories help? If you're an agency, you should care about the ultimate solution.
Yeah, well, I mean, labor is always one, the biggest cost in any of these migrations. So I think it does help. It depends on, if you're also acquiring software or hosting or the rest of it for the solution and migration services, then prices paid doesn't tell the whole story. That's true. But it is the one part that we can work on and standardize and capture and make more transparent to agencies. So we'll start there and see where we can go from there.
Building on what Jim just asked, does that mean that we're going to start standardizing the labor category descriptions as well?
I would think so. I think that would be part of it.
That's great. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, one of the things we're we're doing FAS now is called, we're trying to move to something called category management. And so my Office of Strategic Programs actually has responsibility for 4 of the 6 categories in ITS, which is software, security, IT outsourcing, and IT consulting. And so the labor categories are a really big deal because we're trying to figure out what the market is, and then once we figure out what the addressable federal market is, then we need to figure out, do we have the right sourcing events in place, or do we need to do something different to satisfy that demand? So it's an important deal for us.
It should also help stabilize, I'm sorry, Renee. It should also help stabilize the evaluation criteria as well. If there's a level playing field for a labor category and a labor category description, then it's a lot more cut and dry than if you're asking industry to build a labor category description against the labor category you give them. There's a lot of differences between the way a company would write a labor category description. So if that is all equal and it's standardized across, at least to some degree, across the government, I would think that makes pricing a lot less difficult.
Absolutely. In cloud computing in particular, one of the things that we found is it's difficult to compare apples to apples across CSPs because they have different units of measure, and it makes an evaluation really dicey. So, and we're trying to peel back the layers of the onion, and it's difficult.
Hi there, Gisa with InfoZen. Question for you in regards to what you mentioned as far as being, I think you said vendor agnostic when you're working with agencies, as far as contract agnostic. As you know, kind of walking them through what vehicles they're going to use. So I'm curious, I guess, how that works with companies that have kind of put all their eggs in the GSA basket, and there are groups set up within GSA now that are BD groups working with agencies to push them towards GSA, and working with vendors and trying to kind of compare pipelines as far as opportunities and so forth. So I'm curious if you work with those BD groups, so does it in essence mean that they might not push them to GSA and the GSA vehicle and push them towards another like COSP 3, which not a GSA vehicle?
No, that's a great point. I haven't thought about that. What I thought about is that, NASA and NIH, they have their own channels to market right now, and they have very successful GWAC. So what's the motivation for them to come play with us and be part of our platform? And to count on us to be objective enough to say, oh yeah, it looks like you can do it better, and not just steer the business to GSA. So, but I didn't think about the industry partner side, and that's certainly another consideration.
Hi, Mary Ellen Condon, Condon Associates. To follow up on the comments about the standards, maybe I missed the boat, but are you trying to standardize labor descriptions for GSA vehicles or government-wide? And if government-wide, why would the reaction of the agencies be any different than what we were talking about with the cloud service provider issues and platforms?
Yeah, that would be government-wide. I mean, the categories that are in the government-wide systems that capture the acquisition data. I think there's some work that needs to be done there, and
more brainstorming sessions?
Yeah, I think so.
And I think we have time for one more.
Thank you, ma'am. So a little gratuitous advertising. Tomorrow there's a panel discussion about the contracting side of one of the things that you talked about, Stan. You talked about cloud brokerage, and you also talked about the infrastructure as a service, BPA. But the subject of tomorrow's panel discussion is all around whether or not there is the opportunity for unit pricing of cloud capacity and services. Do you think that the cloud brokerage offerings that you're putting out there are in some way likely to incite vendors to start doing more unit pricing of their offerings?
I would like to think so. So I was brainstorming this with a vendor last week, that was interested in helping us figure out how to standardize this, and it's difficult. I mean, they want to build a model, right, to standardize the definitions based on data that we don't have. So, and so I was trying to explain in a diplomatic way. If I don't have the data, I'm not going to pay you to build a model, right? But so you can either go down the road of trying to figure that out, Or maybe you just go to some kind of performance-based contracting and say, here's the performance and the level of service we expect, and you price it any way you want, and we'll evaluate the total cost of ownership, and if the service is there, you're in. If it's not, you're out. So maybe we don't want to do that. I don't know. We're looking at different ways. Anybody else, or was that the last question? I think I heard that was the last question.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.